Jehovah.
But in the Latin alphabet, Jehovah begins with an I.
J.
So hello and welcome to Imbibing the Bible, and in this episode I want to talk about this name, Jehovah, as the name of God used in Indiana Jones and many other cultural references as well. So, for starters, what is the name of God? Well, I'm not going to say it out loud out of respect, but I know that it's not Jehovah. Jehovah, as a Latin word, stems from the 11th century. In the 11th century, that's when you first see it in Latin manuscripts. Tyndale's 1530 translation of the Bible uses it pervasively throughout. He declares that that is the name of God. Martin Luther's German translation of the Bible from the 1530s does not use Jehovah. In fact, he usually says der Gott or der Herr, or he says more often der Gott, der Herr, the Lord God, rather than using a name or anything like that. The King James Version uses it a handful of times, but usually just uses the Lord, which is the preferred translation now, and was the translation used by the Douay-Rheims Catholic translation of the Bible, which was mostly dependent on the Latin Vulgate, which used Dominus for Lord throughout. Gesenius, the 19th century Hebrew scholar, declared that Jehovah was not the name, was not the correct pronunciation of the name of God found in the Hebrew Bible. And since then it has fallen mostly out of way. By that point it was kind of getting less and less popular. But the name Jehovah has regained its popularity from a late 19th century apocalyptic Christian sect which declared the world would end in 1914. And then when it didn't, they still exist today and they knock on your door regularly. So how did we get to the name Jehovah? The entire discussion revolves around tiny little blots of ink that are found in 11th century or so or later manuscripts of the Hebrew Bible. The name of God in Hebrew is a four-letter word, Yod, He, Vav, He, a Y, an H, V or W, and another H. The vowel pointings of this are usually very different. They're not consistent. But they usually indicate, you either say the word Adonai, my Lord, or Elohim, God, depending on the context. When the word Lord appears before the name, you say God, so as to not say Lord, my Lord, you say Lord God when you pronounce it in Hebrew. And when you often in English translations you get that as well. You get all caps God or all caps Lord in place. That's usually an indication that is the name of God. Because in the Second Temple period, during the time of Jesus, you did not pronounce the name of God except once a year in the Holies of Holies by the high priest. He would go in, he would offer sacrifice for the people and for himself, and then he would pray to the Lord, saying God's name. And the only time it was ever said, and so it was sacrosanct, sacred. It was sacro-sacred, and no one ever said it. But so the Masoretes were very careful when they were copying through their reading tradition. You did not pronounce the name of God out loud, so they had points to indicate you're supposed to say God here, you're supposed to say the Lord here. You do not pronounce this. You indicate it by that. And so then in the 11th century Latin text, they misinterpreted that and they made it Jehovah, Yehovah, however you want to pronounce it in Latin text. And then in the English text, they then further anglicized it and they made it Jehovah. And that's what we have now. So the word Jehovah then is a anglicizing, of a Latinizing, of a misreading of the Hebrew text as the Masoretes intended it. They did not intend us to interpret these points to be the vowels of God's name. They intended us to see these points and say, oh, I'm supposed to read something else so I do not accidentally profane the divine name. And that is why I can never be a Jehovah's Witness.
Aaron had a false god and Jehovah was his name. Oh, Yod, He, Vav, He, Yod, He, Vav, He, and Jehovah was his name. Oh,